I can't remember if I've done this for YouTube. Why Ralph Schism? Now, Ralph was the name of the old man who I sometimes put photos up of him on ralphschism.com. Ralph was the old man who was the most pure countryman by far I've ever known. Totally humble, kind of Napoleon in rags, to quote Bob Dylan. He literally wore rags and a beret, but he just diligently worked away bit by bit. Always, this is in the 70s, always nature friendly, and he taught me everything in nature is connected. And he kind of didn't really teach me something because it didn't exist then. But 3 years ago, I said to myself, having for 15 years, longer really, been active, alone, because nobody else would actually do anything, trying to occasionally call out pollution or illegal activity around the region of the River Wye. Nobody would ever help, and worse than that, sometimes they would, anyway. And then 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, August 3 years ago, 2022, I happened to walk into the office. I've got a recording of it, of Lucy Hurd, the Liberal Democrat candidate for Hereford, and I was there I was kind of bored, and I kind of went into slight attacking mode, of like, why don't you lot care about injustice in the court system? Because her predecessor, Paul Keach, who was an alcoholic who died young, did, and he knew me quite well. I knew him. And anyway, I in the chat we end up like, why haven't you done anything about the River Wye? So Lucy Hurd tells me, so honestly, that openly I should say, that she was going to put in, she realised the River Wye was totally decimated, she was going to try and leverage or whatever, push in politically a designated river bathing area in the region of Hereford. Now, everybody with a brain hated Hereford, really horrible place, wife beater central for hundreds of years. By putting in a DBA, it means that upstream is subject to much more rigorous testing, plus the penalties if polluters pollute are much higher. And she was also honest, and because I said, what a great idea. Yeah, we need one at Hay-on-Wye, one at Brecon, one at Prestine, one at Kington, one at Erdisland. I'm going to go around and speak to people in those areas who I've kind of known and tolerated for many years and tell them, Lucy Hurd has got this great idea, don't reinvent the wheel, follow her lead. And I will make myself responsible for putting down properly what you're doing here. Lucy, can I do that? Yes, you can, Simon. Can I record stuff if there's meetings, so that then we can copy it to other people in the region, and it'll only take 2 or 3 people at each node. And she was honest enough to say that actually she'd merely copied the idea off somebody who was putting one in at Ross-on-Wye. So, a non-egotistical politician, even though later on she turned out to be useless. But in totally good faith, August 2022, yes, meandering around on the River Tame at night, and as well, I spent about 3 months having conversations with, I kind of seen her or that couple at a meeting about the woodlands, or this, that, or the other, about Eco Town. Let's have a word with her or them. Okay, every single one of about 20 people I randomly encountered. About 30 actually. I did go to a few farmers market kind of thing where these people congregate. I explained to them, told them it was Lucy's idea, but I will facilitate or be the person who will make sure that a local node can be copied, what they are doing at Hereford efficiently and blah, 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 no ego. And every single one was like, wow, what a great idea. Count me in. Like, and I explained, it won't be that much work because we're not reinventing the wheel, or you won't be reinventing the wheel. Every single one. About 20 to 30. Okay? I took phone numbers, some I knew already, or took email addresses, whatever. What a great idea. And basically the line was, okay, you with one or two people who you know and who are your friends or allies, if you're based on at Erdisland, for example, on the River Arrow, which is totally destroyed as well as the River Wye, you find your few people and you set up that project where you are. I won't be taking any credit. I am just merely the facilitator. And then over the course of a couple of months, not one replied to a text, WhatsApp, phone call with voicemail, email, or whatever. And also, because it's very important, only face-to-face works, seeing people in the street, some of these people who I'd spoken with 2 weeks earlier, or even 2 months earlier, or even 2 days earlier. It's as if we never had that conversation. But their body language was totally... This is people who would have said, I've heard about some of the things that you try and, get highlighted. I don't agree with them. But no, every single one was like, wow, yes, what a great idea at last. Count me in. Not one followed through. At that point, I schismed from the whole damn lot of them. But 3 or 4 days ago, or is it 5 or 6 days ago, I must record it, was the big day. Now I hear yet another fraud. Juliet something or other. Wildlife camera woman. Yes, the High Court action begins. 4,000 people are group suing Cargill. It's essentially all Cargill through Tesco and Avara and Southwest and Welsh Water. I wrote a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago, to the lawyer, and I should really write into the court, or I should go to the court. Sorry, they're suing over the damage to the rivers Lugg and Wye. But this is during a period, and I lived near enough to the Wye for 17 years. And my daughter swam in that river for 11 years, all summer, with me, okay? Over that period, up until about 2020, I was very aware of what anybody was doing to protect that river, which we knew by, about daughter born 98, by about the year 2003-4, we knew by then it was already suffering. Not one of these people, and Juliet Justine won't have even lived in the area, but especially even Helena Attlee, okay, who was there all the time, and is in this case, and she's, yes, one of those Attlees. I randomly met her a year and a half ago. Oh, yes, I'm part of the case. Now, I know not one of those people even wrote a letter to their MP. Never mind actually do anything like go to planning meetings, because a few of us were trying to encourage people to go to planning meetings to stop the chicken sheds, etc. And now they all want to sue for damages. It is the biggest con. I'm an ultra-environmentalist. I care about every atom of pollution. But sorry, not one of those people, not one, and I'm not a particularly sociable person, but I did know via being a neighbour, one or two of the key people along that river, for example, the Garretts, whose brother was the county councillor, yes, James Gibson Watt. for many years. And the goats live on the river, okay? Pretended to be super eco-aware, end up with a great big campsite that, of course, they call a eco-campsite, probably. Nobody did anything. But also, if you ever tried to speak of the issue of my daughter's fucking river turning into a sterile, then eventually toxic, whatever, they would just tell you, we don't really, there's nothing we can do. We don't really want to talk about this. You're on a downer. You're depressing us. And yet every fucking one of them has joined in with this legal case. Sorry. That to me is worse than Moth and Rainer win and their complete and utter fabricated. Let's quote the magnificent Maria McKee. Her great line, redemptive boasts. In other words, well, it wasn't really, it was just like, oh, no, it's worse than that. It's like, the wind's fabricated pity piece of the world is all evil and against us, so let's go on a walk, okay? There's only one thing worse than the wind scandal, and that's the scandal of it's basically a few dozen of the clique of that region are all sitting around saying, aren't we heroic? We're going to be just as heroic as Helen Steele, who actually was a fucking hero, and her boyfriend. And we're going to have the biggest ever eco case against the worst polluters. But I'm sorry, the way small scale communities work is you do kind of know what's going on. Okay, even me, not a pretty antisocial person, you hear, and in time I started myself to report in things that I saw, and nobody would help you. You know, I'm talking about really serious things damaging that river. Nobody would help you, you know. And there's, I mean, it's laughable. It sums it all up. 2006-07, I would be working in the catchment area for one of the small tributaries that goes into the River Wye. Now, for the last 5 or 10 years, a certain gentleman called Hilary Lawson has been making money from hosting many talks. Probably, I'm quite sure George Monbiot had speaks at his How the Light Gets In festival. Now, when I was dealing with some of the overgrowth, very specifically, I pulled out from his store a bottle of very utter lethal poison that could be put on the bracken. And not only was it out of date, but it's specifically looking at the instructions. It did say that this must be only applied January, February, or something like that. I can't remember exactly the details. And it was April or May. And I was like, Hilary, no, I don't want to use this. You know, I remember now. It's this. You wanted a paddock cleared that was covered in bracken. It's like, no, I'll do this by hand. I can hand scythe using a big scythe. No, you won't. You'll use the bloody poison. Okay. Illegal. I mean, that would be an actual, genuinely unlawful act, because also this was in the Brecon Beacons National Park. You know, and that is the kind of hypocrisy and total and utter. And I did try and I didn't used to tell tales, but yeah. Anyway, the point: not one person ever. There was one once. His name was Alan, and something did happen on the river in 2001. It was the year of 9/11. No, it wasn't. It was the year of the foot and mouth. And he was a steward of really great huge wildflower meadows, and the local people allowed sheep on deliberately during foot and mouth, and the wildflower meadows were destroyed. The Warren River Trust. They did it deliberately, just so that they could profit in money at that time, £600 they would get from grazing about 10 acres that were, it was banned grazing them until the autumn because of the wildflowers. But in foot and mouth, the sheep somehow ended up in the early spring, February, March, on the meadow, the wildflower meadow. And because they were there, the restrictions meant they couldn't be moved again. So what do you know, they were there all that summer and destroyed the absolutely superb wildflower meadow. And basically, poor Alan ended up committing suicide. Okay, he committed suicide by the bottle, but his soul, his heart, he'd been the sort of steward, and the Warren proper wildflower meadow was one of the most fabulous wildflower meadows, and it's right on the River Wye. Okay, this isn't actually about water quality, but you see, nobody did anything about that, and we knew what happened, and so many people would talk about that wildflower meadow because it was like one of the 7 wonders of the world. Nobody did anything about that, and everybody knew exactly those sheep were put in there deliberately because there was some kind of covenant that sheep can't be on. But if they do happen to be renting it out, the Warren Trust or whatever it was called, they would get £600 or £700. Anyway, waffle. That's who Ralph Schism is. I schismed from these people, all of them, 3 years ago, to attempt to engagingly write or communicate, and I failed at everything. But most of the time, I wouldn't have my life 1 second any different. If you can say that about your life, I'll challenge you to a duel.